Hey guys, my name is Mandy Runkle and I'll be discussing with you Chapter 20, Feedback and Coaching, Disciplining and Terminating Staff. So, introduction. Oftentimes, many new or even ineffective managers, they avoid conflict or they may feel uncomfortable providing effective feedback. This leads to negative consequences such as patient quality concerns, patient safety concerns, increased costs for the unit, poor morale, and declining worker satisfaction. A good manager focuses on positive feedback. Positive feedback is constructive feedback, and this is the most important reinforcer of behavior. So, in this introduction, it's pretty much just explaining that this PowerPoint is going to go over how to give good, positive, constructive feedback, how to deal with discipline, how to confront behavior, and how to deal with termination. It's also going to touch on coaching. So feedback. Who gives feedback? Clinical and educational supervisors, your manager, patients, trainees, peers, and colleagues. Many of you might be thinking of your annual nursing performance that happens every year where your manager sits down with you and reviews your performance for a raise. My performance review is currently coming up. My manager sends out a random performance review to a colleague. I pick a colleague to do one. I do one, and then my manager also tells me what she observes from seeing me work on the unit. So, feedback that you give is supposed to be positive, it's supposed to be constructive, comprehensive, and I touched a little bit on the comprehensiveness when I mentioned all of the different people doing these nursing performance reviews on me. So, like another colleague, a colleague I picked, my manager is watching. She's trying to get the full picture of how I'm really performing. A minor issue that might be addressed would be texting on the floor while you're working. A major issue might be repeated call-offs, tardy issues. A good manager leads by modeling and is observant on the unit. This will allow them to be more aware of workplace behaviors and performance problems, allowing them to better listen feedback. So feedback is so important because it assists in developing competence and confidence. It closes the gap between how you're actually performing and your desired performance, or how good you could actually be. So it lets you sit down, express your thoughts and your feelings, think about where you are, think about where you want to be or you should be. And this in turn helps you to perform at a higher level. So the main idea here is that feedback is essential because we're all human. Room for improvement is vital to growth. Without it, we can just assume that everything is fine and we'll never change or continue to get better and be the best that we can be. Oftentimes you might think of feedback in a preceptor relationship. Keys to successful feedback. So you want to stop and think about why and what behind the behavior. So for example, why is the nurse performing at this level? Is there something else going on in her life? Did the nurse not receive appropriate training? Is anxiety at work here? Is it sleep deprivation? You want to think about why the nurse is doing the behavior that you're trying to give feedback on. This will help her process and think of steps to fix the behavior. Good feedback is timely and ongoing. Ideally you want to correct and give feedback the moment you notice the behavior. It's goal referenced. It's constructive and it's positive. It's there to build up the person. It's tangible and transparent, and it's respectful, and it encourages reflection. When you give feedback, you often want to do it in a private setting. You don't want to do it anywhere in the open to embarrass the employee or make her feel singled out. And you want to avoid jumping to conclusions too. Try to get the whole picture. Effective feedback Effective feedback involves planning in advance, starting gently, being specific. It encourages self-reflection. The person giving feedback wants to observe the nonverbal cues of the person receiving it. So just to make sure they don't feel like they're being, threatened or singled out or attacked or about their work or anything like that. One-on-one feedback is ideal. Barriers can often include fear of upsetting colleagues, lack of respect for the person trying to give you the feedback, or maybe the barrier is just that the feedback that is trying to be given is just too generalized. It's just not specific enough that you really know what you need to fix or you need to work on. Coaching. Coaching is similar to feedback in that coaching is a collaborative relationship. It happens between a willing individual. The coach here helps the individual continue and supports their professional career, and they help them figure out how to develop appropriate skills and actions that will lead them to where they want to be. In order for coaching to be effective, the learner must be ready, willing, and able. So good coaches teach by modeling, and good learners learn by observing. Confronting behavior. So confrontation usually happens after feedback. Feedback is the initial step when you try to work with the employee and try to fix the behavior. If the behavior isn't being fixed, confrontation might need to happen. This is the first step of the disciplinary actions. It puts the employee in high alert. It's applied, as I said, when the disciplinary process begins, and it's a documented event. Discipline. This is not a fun word, but discipline is not punishment. It's not designed to embarrass an employee. It's not personal, and it's not based on whether an employee is liked or disliked. Discipline calls employees' attention to the behavior that is not appropriate and must be corrected. So discipline is a warning, a consequence of employee behavior, a wake-up call, and it's about addressing a behavior that needs to change. Good managers know how to address the problem and not make the employee feel like they're the problem, because they're not. But good managers work with the employee trying to figure out why the action occurred or why the behavior occurred. Discipline. So with discipline, there's two warnings after the confronting behavior occurs. So with discipline, you get the verbal warning and the written warning. Each stage of this is documented, just like confronting, and equal staffing or equal treatment of all staff in the unit is expected. Oftentimes on our unit, the thing that we hear most with employees getting verbal or written warnings is for their call-offs. We're only allowed 4. Oftentimes call-offs happen because of emergency events such as sickness or family problems, things like that. Termination, not a word anyone wants to hear, but termination is a process that ends employment. When termination happens, it becomes a permanent part of the employee's record. Nurses work with human resources. They need to prepare documentation that says they went through confrontation, they gave the employee written and verbal warnings, and nothing changed. Often a good line for managers to say if other employees try to figure out what happened to the employee that was terminated is, "I'm sorry, I do not have the liberty of sharing the information out of respect for staff involved." So here is a video.
How to discipline an employee. Hello and welcome to Video Chat. When employees aren't performing to the standards expected or are allowing a poor attitude to get the better of them, they can affect the morale and productivity of your whole team. As their manager, you need to take decisive action before the situation worsens. We've spoken to Mark Williams of mtd.co.uk to show you how to discipline an employee for maximum
our output.
The employee needs to know why this is an issue to you or the department. The context will help them to determine the importance of the matter. Step 4. Specify changes. Tell the employee what you expect them to change about their behaviour.
I need you at your desk by 9 o'clock, ready to work.
Be as specific as you can so they don't see this as a personal attack on them. It's simply a change that you would ask anybody to carry out. Step 5. Explain consequences. As this is a verbal warning, outline the consequences if their behaviour doesn't change.
Derek, this is a verbal warning. If this continues, I'm going to have to request a disciplinary.
Ensuring they understand the results of not changing makes them feel more responsible for it. Step 6. Provide support. Finish on a positive and express your support for their efforts to change.
Having said all of that, I want to avoid going down that route. You are a valued member of this team, and I know you can change.
By doing this, they accept responsibility and start thinking positively about the changes rather than being defensive. Step 7. Disciplining your friends. Be consistent. You spend a significant amount of your life at work, so it's natural that you're going to make friends with some of your workmates. Unfortunately, you're still their boss, and when it comes to discipline, you need to be consistent. It'll do team morale no good if you overlook unacceptable behaviour in one person, but discipline others. Be impersonal. As with all disciplinary action, your treatment of the situation should be impersonal. Let them know that you're happy with their work, and that by introducing this change, you can see only positive results in the future. This way, you aren't making this a personal issue, but one where everyone wins. Done.
So here's a link to a webpage here that you can go to AmericanNurseToday.com. It just goes over constructive feedback, how to give it in difficult conversations. And here you can see a picture on effective feedback, the cycle. First, you need to discover the issue. Then you come up with analysis and causes of the consequence. Why did this issue occur? Then you work to create options and solutions. You commit to an action, and then you evaluate your performance. And you see if the action that you committed to is working. Here are my references. And thank you everyone for watching.